Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the March 7th Motor Vehicle and Transportation meeting. Thank you all for being here this evening. It's been a long day, but we'll get through. So we've got a long agenda tonight. Couple bills we're just going to have on for discussion purposes, but I'm hoping that we'll be able to move a fair number of these, obviously, given the will of the committee. That is not my call, that is all of ours. All of our call. Anyway, let's start with a discussion of HB 28. We are not going to vote on this tonight, but I'd like us to begin the conversation. So Patrick, would you please tell us what HB 28 does?
Okay, House Bill 28 breaks up vehicle registrations by weight class. Current law has 2 weight classes. This turns it into 4 and increases the vehicle registration fee for the heavier classes. The new class of $3,500 and less, it was $3,700, stays at $50.50 annually. For a vehicle $3,500 to $3,700 goes to $101. For a vehicle that is between $3,700 and $5,000 goes to $153, and a vehicle $5,000 or more is $229.50. And then also does the same sort of thing for trucks and for multi-purpose vehicles, which are basically minivans. With it appears to be the same numbers for minivans. Trucks are a little different. Trucks looks to appear to have the same 3/4 ton or less and a maximum registration fee of $63.75, which is the same. Then the bigger trucks, not more than $3,500 to $5,000, $127.50, $5,000 to $7,000, $191.25, and then if they certify that it's for use in construction, same $63.75 as for the normal size truck, light truck.
Okay, thank you. Delegate Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple questions for Patrick. So what classes is this not included? Which vehicles are not subject to an increase under the bill?
Well, pretty much everything else. This is Class A passenger, light trucks, and minivans. Now, of course, those 3 are probably the biggest classes. So that's going to get a lot of vehicles.
Yeah.
So all your other ones, your street rods, farm trucks, trying to think of funerals, hearses, all of the other classifications are not part of this.
Got it. Okay.
And is this a reduction or what is?
It's an increase based on the size of the vehicle.
Okay.
Yeah, and have we ever done this before? I mean, have we differed it based on weight?
Well, yes, current law has 2 different weight classifications. Generally.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay. Yeah, I mean, so this bill, I mean, it makes sense to me, right? That you would have to pay more for your fee based on how much wear and tear you're putting on the roads. To me, that's just intuitive. And I think, do we know the last time that any of these fees were increased, Patrick?
I believe it was 2003 or 4.
Okay. Got it. Yeah, I mean, and could you mention again what the just mention the increases again, like from what to what?
Okay, gladly. For passenger vehicles, that is reclassified a little bit. Current law it's $3,700 and lower. Now it's $3,500 and lower. That stays the same at 50/50. Then if the weight goes from $3,500 but not more than $3,700, a small little class, $101 from $76.50, which was the previous high. And then for a vehicle with a weight of $3,700 to $5,000, $153 a year, and then over $5,000, $229.50.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess my take, Madam Chair, is those don't sound like very large increases to me. I'm really terrified. I mean, been hearing it all session. I'm really terrified about the state of the Transportation Trust Fund. I just feel like we don't have enough money to do just basic maintenance and repair, much less, build the roads and the train projects and all the stuff that people want in their districts. I mean, it's really, really bad. So I think this is an opportunity here, and I guess maybe we'll get more opportunities. But to me, this is an obvious opportunity where we haven't increased these fees for more than 20 years. I don't even know. I'm not even sure these increases are even as much as they should be. In other words, I'm not sure the bill goes far enough. I would also say that I'm not so sure we should just pick on the people in these classes. I would like to see it broadened out and everybody pay at least a little bit more by class and by size. Because otherwise, I mean, basically people with heavier vehicles, and this includes EV drivers too, like me, EVs are heavier. So I'm not trying to pick on truck drivers or whatever. EVs are heavier. It makes no sense to me that me driving around an EV, putting more wear and tear on the roads, I would pay, the same cost, or a lower cost than someone driving a much lighter vehicle that is not putting as much damage on the road. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Delegate Stewart. Delegate Davis?
Thank you. Patrick, could you give me an example of what a 3,700-pound car is or vehicle is?
I do not know that.
Hmm.
I wouldn't want to speculate. But this is the passenger vehicle category. So I imagine it's your smaller cars, perhaps your Toyota Corollas or a Ford Focus or something like that. That would be a guess.
Is anybody from MVA on the call?
We do. We have April. April, do you know the answer?
I do not know the answer, but I would give me 2 seconds. I'm going to try to pull it up.
All right, well, I own a Tesla, so I'm gonna,
So I quickly Googled it, Madam Chair.
okay.
It had to be a pretty big vehicle. So even like a RAV4, for example, which is sort of like a relatively standard SUV, it weighs 3,370.
No, is that the hybrid or is that the
That's just the regular one. A Toyota Camry weighs 3,296. A Ford Escape, just a regular one, which is around the same size as a RAV4, it weighs 3,314. A Mazda 6 weighs 3,437. So I'm not actually answering the question in the sense that I'm not giving you any examples of 3,700, but it does not include basically most of the cars that people actually drive around.
So I drive a Tesla and it says 45 to 47. So I am in that third category. So Patrick, you said these haven't been changed since 2004, which means that EVs weren't as heavily or as in there weren't as much of them on the road.
There weren't any of them.
Any of them back then. Yeah, that's what I was
Hybrids
thinking.
were
But
just
then
coming in.
hybrid was just coming in. Okay. And
So
as we've talked about.
I'm sorry, I was muted when I asked my question.
Oh,
I wanted to know if we had any kind of estimate on the weight of the hybrids, if they're like a lot more or in between or what? Like the RAV4 or Highlander or something like that.
I am sure that Delegate Stewart will look that up for us. In the meantime, so we haven't changed this since EVs came online. Patrick, can you just give folks a quick rundown? Because Delegate Stewart mentioned the Transportation Trust Fund. That's not just for roads, right? What else does the Transportation Trust Fund fund?
Well, it funds roads, rail, transit, certainly some port activities, I would think. Not
Port
MDTA.
activities.
The port, the airport, yep.
Not MDTA.
Right. not MDTA, but it does the port, and we talked about Martin's Airport today. Is that covered?
I believe so.
Okay, so that's TTF as well, because I know people just think about that it's just, transit or just roads, but it's actually a lot more than that. Okay, thank you. Delegate Stewart.
I had the answer to Delegate Healy's question. The RAV4 hybrid is 3,775 pounds of curb weight. So it's right at that 3,700. So basically when we're talking about 3,700, I think we're probably mostly talking about, of the cars that people would actually drive around, not like commercial vehicles. You're mostly, I think, probably talking about either big trucks or EVs and hybrids.
Okay.
Okay, further questions, discussions, thoughts?
And I gotta look.
Okay,
This
Well-
is just for discussion tonight, right?
yes, this is just for discussion tonight.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other discussion on this? Yes, Delegate Guyton, thank you.
I am so sorry. It took me a while. So just from my point of view, it doesn't make I sort of agree. Well, I do agree with Delegate Stewart that if we're going to raise these fees, let's raise them enough to make a significant change, because it doesn't matter for my constituency whether I raise them a penny or whether I raise them a reasonable amount. Either way, they're going to consider it a tax. So let's do something substantive with it so that it makes it worth the squeeze. It's sort of what I think.
Got it, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, thank you, everyone. Good conversation. We will keep discussing. Let's now move to HB 282. Speed monitoring systems agencies, statements and certificates of violations. Patrick, you want to walk us through the bill?
Well, we have an amendment, or I drafted up an amendment that Gretchen should have. The bill as drafted says current law for speed cameras is that you need a signed statement by law enforcement officer signing off on the citation. And this bill changes it to be a police officer or a technician. But the amendment limits the technician only for municipal corporation that does not maintain a police force.
I think
Thank
that
you.
helps.
Yeah, so the discussion was that going to from those jurisdictions that have law enforcement to all the way to non-law enforcement was just a jump too far. So in order to help those municipalities that want these programs but don't have law enforcement, this was the compromise that we came up with, because right now they have to contract with another law enforcement. Yes, Delegate Morgan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I use a rural county like statement. You have a county police force and you're 30 officers short right now to meeting whatever their goals are supposed to be. That's as of today. So you're saying that we would have to take a law enforcement officer off this patrol in the streets to do this, where they could possibly be able to hire a technician if the funds were available.
That is the current law. So what we're trying to do with this bill is take a step away from the law enforcement requirement. I know MACO and MML want us to go much farther than this, but this is where the comfort zone was in terms of moving away from the law enforcement.
So in the case of St. Mary's, which only has a county police force, we would have to use a county officer to do this work. We would not be able to hire a technician, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Thank you.
Delegate Davis.
Thank you. So I guess you guys have noticed I generally do not like speed cameras. And I just want to go on the record that with the proliferation, and we're doing a lot of them, proliferation of speed cameras, that they don't take bad actors off the road. You're not giving points. It seems to be where everybody's going, where every jurisdiction is going, and we're not taking bad actors off the road. And I believe they're just for money grabs. And another problem I have with it is that they get put in certain communities, and we're not doing anything about about certain communities being targeted. So I just wanted to weigh in on that I won't be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Davis. Delegate Healy?
Yeah, just a couple of things. One, on the police officers. When the original law was passed, the reason police officers were put in was because they wanted to have someone who had something to lose, that if they were not doing it honestly or correctly, that they would be a sworn officer, and it wouldn't be just a town clerk or somebody like that, because of the fear of having this be just a money grab. A lot of people have, over the years, since it's been in effect, have seen that it has, in a lot of places, changed behavior, and it has reduced speeding in the school zones. And that's why it has expanded in some places, because based on people's experience. So I think this is a good step in the right direction. Well, I don't even know if it's a good step in the right direction. It's a good step because for the small towns that don't have any police, they would, and they have in the past, had to rely on a neighboring police force. And the neighboring police force don't want to share their personnel with somebody who doesn't have one. So I think that this actually is an opportunity for the smaller jurisdictions to participate if they think it will make their streets safer. So I'm fine with it, with the amendment.
Thank you, Delegate Healy. Delegate Stewart?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I think when this law was originally written to require police officer involvement, I think that made a lot of sense for the time. I mean, I think that there were a lot of worries about this kind of program and how it would work and how it would be implemented. I mean, we can, even those of us who weren't here, we can empathize because we just passed the noise camera bill, and that took us a couple of years to even kind of wrap our head around. So I can understand what it must have felt like to roll this out in the initial stages. But I think we're now, this number of years later, I think we're clearly at a point where we can say that police officers are not necessary to look at a photo of someone's license plate. And especially at a time where I think we have rising crime throughout the state, I really think our officers should be doing the job that the taxpayers pay them to do, not doing administrative and clerical work in a back office that any trained person could do. And so I think regardless of what you think about speed cameras broadly, I think this just makes sense in terms of good government. Now, that said, obviously, I like the original bill, but I do respect the amendment. I understand that we need to sort of be taking steps in this direction that aren't necessarily as radical as the initial bill. I did some quick Googling. There are 70 of these jurisdictions across the country that don't have police officers, 70. So in a way, this actually will be a very interesting pilot program to see how this is done, to gain better, I think all of us gain more comfort about technicians doing this. I don't expect them to have any problem, but we'll have 70 examples, hopefully, of them doing really well. And then we can come back to this. And then I think the rationale at that point can be, hey, if some of the smallest towns in the state can pull this off, then certainly now we can feel comfortable expanding it to some of the larger jurisdictions as well.
Thank you, Delegate Stewart. And just to correct, I thought I heard you say 70 in the country, but there are 70 in the state.
Correct. Sorry, I don't care about the rest of the country.
Thank you. Delegate Jacobs.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. Patrick, perhaps you can help me with this. Understanding if someone challenges one of these tickets and it's a technician that's monitoring this, how does that work in the court system?
I don't think it matters because the police officer is not required to show, and the technician under the bill is not required to show. The operator can be requested to show, but the ticket is self-authenticating.
So under current law, the police officers aren't, if someone challenges the speed camera fine, that the police officer, which is current law, would not be required to go to court. That's what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay. Um,
Move the amendment.
thank you. Is there a second? Okay, I see both Delegate Guyton and Delegate Healy raising their hands, so there's a second. Any further discussion on the amendment? Okay, all in favor of the amendment, say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, all those opposed? Okay, the amendment passes. The
Move
bill
the
is
bill.
amended.
Move the bill.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor of the bill as amended? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Delegate Morgan? Okay,
Delegate Davis.
and Delegate Davis.
Davis,
Sorry, I didn't see you, Delegate Davis. My apologies. Okay, 282 passes as amended. Thank
Madam Chair,
you.
and I think Delegate Jacob was opposed too.
Delegate Jacobs? Yes,
I was opposed.
you're opposed. Okay, my apologies. Man, I
I was using
failed y'all.
I was using the alligator arm, I guess.
Wow, I haven't heard that one. All right, moving on to, I know we're sort of not alphabetical, but on my list, HB 511. We talked about this one before. The stop as yield. So further discussion on the bill. Delegate Davis.
Yes. Do we have an amendment to address 50-mile-an-hour streets, crossing 50-mile-an-hour streets?
Crossing 50-mile-an-hour streets.
This is a big problem in my county, that some of our bike paths go across 50-mile-an-hour streets.
So stop signs going
Stop
across
signs.
50-mile-an-hour streets,
Bike path with stop signs.
bike paths with stop signs. And then they crossed 50-mile-an-hour streets. There's no amendment on that. I don't recall that discussion. From last time. Did you?
Why
did
don't
you
we,
prepare?
why don't we have the discussion? That's my problem. I spoke with the bill sponsor about it.
Okay. Did you have an amendment drafted?
No,
Okay.
I'd like to have the discussion that it doesn't work everywhere.
Okay. Any further discussion? Delegate Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I mean, at the risk of just being repetitious, I mean, I would just say that I thought this bill sounded crazy when I first heard it last year. I know I've said this before, and then I just sort of read the studies, and it seems basically irrefutable to me that it actually does reduce deaths of pedestrians and cyclists, and it reduces crash rates. I'm not a huge avid cyclist, so I don't totally understand, but from what I do know from the testimony is that basically staying in motion or somewhat in motion makes the cyclists more visible to drivers. And so it's safer for everyone. And even as someone who doesn't really get on a bike, except for very, very rare occasions, but I do drive, I don't want to hit a cyclist. That seems, I've never done it. I don't aspire to. It seems like a very terrible experience in all ways. And if we can put in a bill that has empirical data behind it that makes cyclists more visible, so those of us who don't want to hit them won't hit them, that to me is a win. So I will be voting in favor of the bill.
Thank you, Delegate Stewart. Delegate Ziegler.
Sorry, thank you, Madam Chair. So to me, it has a lot to do with the speed at which the bicyclist keeps moving. You know, you can go really fast on a bicycle, like really too fast for a driver's reaction. And so that's one problem. I also wanted to raise something that Delegate Davis raised the last time we talked about this bill, which is the issue of liability and how this bill would change that, which I thought was an interesting point. And I guess I also have a prejudice that neither drivers nor bicyclists really pay much attention to us changing laws. They kind of do what they do. So that maybe the liability issue is really what we would effectively be changing.
Thank you, Delegate Ziegler. Delegate Jacobs?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I always thought it was the law. Is where I live, they go through these stop signs like it's normal business. And so I don't have a problem with it, honestly, because I think it's safer. If you know, sometimes you should sit near an intersection and take a look if there's bicyclists coming through and they do stop. That sometimes they stumble a bit on their bikes, and when they go to get started, they almost fall over. And to me, that's much more dangerous than having a much more wide open view of the whole area. You know, you don't have the obstructions of your car, you know, the obstructions that are in and around the windshield and the body of the car and whatnot. You know, you have a whole open view as a bicyclist, and I think they can see well. And personally, I just think that it's more dangerous that when you stop and start again, that people have a tendency to almost fall over, and some do, just through that whole process. So like I said in the beginning, I thought it was law. That's the way we've been doing it where I come from as long as I can remember, since I was riding on the sidewalk
And lost your bike.
and lost my bike.
Thank you, Delegate Jacobs. Delegate Healy.
Yeah, I've been kind of inundated from a lot of bicyclists have been talking to me about this particular bill because they heard what I said the last time, and I've taken it into consideration what they've said, but I still have misgivings. But I'm not sure how I'm still not sure how I'm going to vote. But I want to say something. I want to talk about this discussion a little bit. I'm glad that Delegate Ziegler raised the issue of liability again. And I think, you know, Delegate Vaughn is right that none of us want to ever be in a situation where we're driving and we hit a bicyclist. That would be like the worst possible thing I could think of that you would have to live with, that if you hurt somebody. And I agree with what Delegate Jacobs has said. People drive like it's that way. The law is that way anyway. And like the last time I said, like that always irritates me because they're not following the rules of the road. My concern now, as I'm kind of evolving on this, is how will we ever enforce anything regarding to this new law? Like as Delegate Ziegler said, you know, they're not paying attention to what we pass as law so much as if there's no real enforcement, then it's like not having a law at all. So I'm really concerned about that. If they do go fast sometimes, if I've been at a stop sign and they go flying through, I mean, literally almost, you know, faster than the speed limit in this 25-mile-an-hour little town with stop signs at every block. So I understand why they don't want to stop at every block, but neither do drivers want to stop at every block. So, and there's a lot of that too, which is why we should have cameras on the stop signs. But that's a whole other issue. But that might take care of some of these issues. I have a concern about the liability because somebody who, after they've done, if there is a crash, now they're also responsible for somebody who ran right out in front of them. And it's real because the balance of liability has shifted. And I'm not a lawyer, but I know Delegate Davis, I really appreciate, you know, what you've said and talked about. And Maryland is this state where, you know, if you contributory negligence, where if you contribute to the crash in any way, shape, or form, nobody, it's a mess. So as I said, I will vote when it comes up, but I'm still not sure how.
Thank you, Delegate Healy. Delegate Stewart?
Thank you for the second bite at the apple, Madam Chair. I thought Delegate Healy's remarks were very nuanced, and I appreciated them. I'll just respond quickly to the liability issue. It is true that, you're going to have an issue of like per se negligence, taken away. Basically, like if there is something that is not allowed by law, and then there's a question of who's liable and who's negligent in an accident, you can be held as per se negligent if you violate a traffic law. And by taking that out, we have absolutely shifted what the liability rules are. But I guess I'm not as concerned about this, because if we buy, and I understand maybe not everyone buys this, but I buy that this Idaho stop thing is the safest way for pedestrians to both stay alive, for cyclists to both stay alive and to prevent people like me from running into them. If we accept that, then I don't know why we would want them to be held liable for doing a thing, number one, as Delegate Jacobs said, that folks are already doing all the time. And number two, I don't know why we would want them to be liable for damages and litigation for doing a thing that has resulted in a dramatic reduction of crashes in multiple other states. We would be punishing people for doing things in their own self-interest. In fact, indeed, for their own self-preservation and self-survival. So it seems perverse. The status quo seems perverse to me, that we would either allow someone to recover against them or not allow a cyclist to recover for just doing something not only that is commonplace, but also that literally every study suggests is keeping them alive. So anytime you shift liability, I get it. It triggers some trepidation. I totally get that. We do it all the time in this subcommittee, but I do understand the trepidation that can cause. I would just say in this case, I can't imagine why we would want a cyclist to be held liable for doing something that's clearly not only in their self-interest, but in the interest of reducing crashes overall on our roadways. If you believe the studies. If you don't believe the studies, then okay, you could probably just tune out the last 2 minutes of what I just said. But if you believe the studies, then I think we should be changing the liability rules.
Thank you, Delegate Stewart.
Madam Chair, can I make something clear?
Yes, sir.
Just to be clear, we are not shielding bicyclists from liability. This is just a nuanced area of the liability law that Delegate Stewart's talking about, and he's correct. That would, if they broke the law, would possibly shift the burden to them, and it would take that out. But they still, if they're negligent, they could still be taken to court.
So Patrick, if they did not yield at a stop sign to a car,
Then
Then
negligence
they
per
would-
se would still apply.
yeah, so then they're negligent.
Right.
Okay, got it.
If you can prove it in court. It's all about proving it in court in a fact situation.
Always.
Liable.
Okay, Delegate
Cameras would
Davis.
help. Cameras would help.
I don't want to beat a dead horse, but as an attorney who does this for a living, what you're forcing is litigation on every time. Every time there's a bicycle and a car involved, you're forcing it, because it would be clear if the right of way was for the car and not for the bicyclist. It makes it a lot more clear. I really don't care. The gig seems to be up. It's fine with me, but I'm not going to sit here and act like I don't know what's really happening, because I do this for a living.
Okay, thank you. Are we ready to vote? Delegate Jacobs has given a thumbs up. Delegate Jacob, Delegate Morgan giving thumbs up. All right, Delegate Jacobs, are you moving the bill?
I moved the bill.
All right,
I'll second.
all those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand. Okay, those opposed?
I'm not going to vote this time. I'll vote in the committee when I have to.
Don't you have to vote in sub?
I thought subcommittee was advisory that.
Oh, you're sitting in your chair.
Well, I'll get out of my chair and walk across the room if you want.
I don't see you, Delegate Healy. You're not here. Delegate Davis was opposed. Delegate Healy is not here. All right. Thank you all. You know, we'll see how that goes. HB 511 passes the subcommittee. Moving on to just also thank you all for this discussion. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate everybody's point of view and bringing their experience and expertise to the discussion.
Were there amendments on that, by the way?
There
No.
were not.
Okay.
There were not. HB 737, Patrick?
Okay, and Gretchen, you should have an amendment on that one too. We've been working with the MDOT and the like, and this is Delegate Jay Long's bill, Jeff Long, that takes statewide the Neil Parrott bill from a few years ago that makes it a policy of the state to stay to the right if you're the slower moving vehicle, and requires state highway administration to inform motorists of these requirements with signage and through the dynamic messaging system. And we have some amendments on that. We're narrowing the state highway administration's charge to say that at the request of a local jurisdiction or on its own initiative, the state highway administration can notify the public of these requirements by placing and maintaining in its sole discretion signs at regular intervals. And then for the dynamic messaging, it puts the requirement on them to the extent authorized by federal law, which apparently has tightened a bit on that, on what can go on these signs. So we have the amendments. They're requested by State Highway. Oh, and by the way, the amendments should bring the fiscal note down significantly.
Thank you. Any questions on the amendment? Yes, Delegate Healy.
Yeah, I just want to understand, is there, because this was before, this was only like this is a suggestion. It wasn't a mandate. Is this turning it into a mandate now?
No,
Yeah.
it's the suggestion was the driving behavior, and that's still a suggestion. The mandate and the money was on the signage that SHA was required to do, slower vehicles to the right, stuff like that.
Okay, so they're not going to do that, or they don't have to do that.
Well, it's in their discretion as to whether it's needed at a particular place, that, whether they see it or the local jurisdiction requests it. And we're talking about state highways here. So.
But there aren't any tickets or points or anything involved in this.
No citations, no points,
Okay.
no penalties.
Thank you. I'm fine with
Thank you. Thank you. Delegate Morgan?
Just help me a little bit with this. I'm trying to think. I'm going down a state highway and the speed limit is 55. And the person in the right lane is going 55 and the guy in the left lane is going 50. And somebody wants to pass at 60 and they can't get by. So is it allowing then the person in the left lane to stay at 50 and the guy in the right lane goes at 55 and people are going to start swerving around to get around the people? I'm just confused.
Basically, this is you're describing the right situation that the bill is addressing. And what the law says, and this bill is making statewide, the law currently only applies in rural areas on interstates. And the bill is taking that out and applying it statewide. It's just saying that the policy of the state is that the slow moving vehicle move to the right. There is explicitly no penalties, no citations, no points for that, for not obeying that. But it's, taught in driver's ed, and it's promoted by SHA through signage and the dynamic messaging boards. Soft power, if you will.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Delegate Davis?
Hey, this reminds me of the Move Get Out the Way Munoz bill. What's the
That
difference?
has penalties.
Yep,
That has
that's the
penalty?
difference.
Okay, Patrick, do we distinguish in the bill if I'm doing the speed limit in the fast lane?
No, just slower vehicles move to the right.
Okay, lastly, the fiscal note, you think it will come down considerably? It's at 750,000 now. Can you give me a guess?
Well, I can't give you guesses. I think it's between 250 and 750, depending on how many signs they have to put up. And the idea here is to say, hey, you don't have to, SHA doesn't have to go out, scour the state, find everywhere where this might be needed. Just if Charles County, says, hey, can you take a look at Route 4 at this area? Could this help us with traffic, with a slow traffic move to the right sign? They'll take a look and make the decision.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? And Patrick, the 250 to 750, that was beforehand. Now it's hard to
Right.
tell.
Well, because the language that was kind of under the assumption, the interpretation that they would have to, look all over the state. And now the language is softening that considerably, saying, at the request of a local jurisdiction, and then making sure that the discretion as to whether there is a sign needed is purely in SHA's hands. I mean, these are state highways we're talking about. And that does actually clarify that it is state highways we're talking about, which was all we were talking about before, but the amendments do clarify that.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the amendments? Okay, all in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay, anyone opposed? Delegate Davis is shaking her head. Okay. All right, the amendment passes on the bill.
Move the bill.
Second.
Motion, there's a second, okay. On the bill is amended, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Delegate Davis. Okay. Bill passes as amended. HB 750. Patrick.
Okay. Okay. I think there's a little confusion on this bill. This is the bill, Delegate Ziegler is in the subcommittee. First it talks about being able to bring in 15-year-old registration plates and getting replacements from MVA. And then it talks about, this is important, and the current law says person may not obscure or modify any vehicle registration plate with intent to avoid identification. The bill strikes the with intent to avoid identification and substitute in a manner that may prevent identification. And then it goes on to provide that for the first violation, you get a warning notice, and second violation, 60 days after the warning, you get points. And then obviously normal course you would get points, and then increases the points to 3. Now there's amendments on this bill. The first part of the amendment strikes out the registration plate trade-in for 15 years and older, which is important because it wipes out the fiscal note. And then the second amendment makes it a secondary offense. I'm not sure if that's quite what they wanted to do, but that's what the amendment does. Makes keeps the language in a manner that may prevent identification, but makes that a secondary offense, meaning you have to be pulled over for something else before you can be charged with that. And I think MDTA might want to speak on that a little bit, because I think they were more looking to get rid of the secondary offense, which would reflect their testimony.
Got it. I'm actually going to turn it over to the bill sponsor. Delegate Ziegler, did you want to say anything?
Yes, so this is a bill that Senator Kagan brought in the Senate, and I cross-filed it. Delegate Love and I were just talking about the warning, and we're thinking that maybe it would be a better idea to leave the warning up to the discretion of an officer who stops you. The secondary offense is there because there was a lot of concern about policemen stopping people of color excessively, and also some concern that traffic stops are dangerous for law enforcement. But I think the, driving while black thing was more of a concern. And I mean, I'm certainly open to not making it a secondary offense. The real intent of the bill is to shift the burden to the driver that you have to have a legible driver license plate. It doesn't matter whether you intended to, deliberately obscure your license plate or not. You just have to have one that can be read. We have so many new speed cameras, as Delegate Davis has pointed out. But it's not really just for speed enforcement. It's for a lot of things, amber and silver alerts, for, Easy Pass, for cops finding people who've broken the law that they're trying to find. So basically, the idea is that we need to be able to read your license plate. And this would make that an offense. But as I say, I'm very open to, if MVA doesn't think it should be a secondary offense, I think that's something we can certainly talk about.
Thank you. Delegate Guyton.
Thank you. I really appreciate and agree with everything the sponsor just said about the bill. I don't see a whole lot of point in passing this bill as a secondary offense for all of the reasons that were just elucidated by Delegate Ziegler. I would be much more interested in passing it as a primary offense, because it's important that we don't this is something I've read about in the paper recently as well, that people are doing this intentionally to avoid the cameras. And now it's something that's getting out there as a way to get around some of our other laws. So that's where I am on that. I thought I would share. I would much prefer it to be a primary offense.
Thank you, Delegate Guyton. Delegate Healy.
If it's not a secondary offense, that's a deal breaker for me. I'm not going to support adding primary offenses for traffic stops. I think we should try to do everything we can to avoid them. And actually, that was one of the initial reasons I put my camera bill in, was because it would reduce the opportunities and need for police traffic stops, which are dangerous for police and very dangerous for especially people of color and Hispanics and all kinds of other people that may be targeted by prejudiced police officers. So for me, if it's not secondary, I'm not supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Healy. Delegate Stewart.
Thanks, Madam Chair. First, I just want to say this is a really smart bill. I think the fact that you had like an intentionality requirement to this section probably made it relatively unenforceable. It's just very difficult to prove intent with this kind of stuff, and it's probably one of the only areas in the transportation code, other than I guess we saw an intent the other day in terms of like intentionally opening your door for the bicyclist, right? But overall, usually intent is not a big component of these things. So I really like the bill. On the issue of primary versus secondary, I'm sort of two minds. I definitely don't want people pulled over because they don't look like me. At the same time, I think people that are doing this oftentimes know what they're doing. But I'm a little bit more of, I would say my position on it is really governed less by my own views and more about just sort of political pragmatism on the floor, which I think that we are going to have a really hard time passing this as a primary offense, just based on some of the discussions that have happened on the House floor, like within the last decade on issues like this. I also know that we've been going the other way on a number of things, like the fuzzy dice bill, for example, where we moved a lot of things from primary to secondary, and making this a primary offense would be going in the opposite direction. What I will say, though, is maybe one compromise that the subcommittee can consider is if you know, and then this sort of goes against what I said earlier about the intent thing, but I wonder if you could have a primary offense of intentionally doing it. In other words, if it's very clear that you're using like a screen or like one of these products you can buy on Amazon to just like completely cover it. And so if intent is clear, I can see that being a primary offense. But if it's just more like it's obstructed and it's not obvious that the person is doing it intentionally, but it's just like, you know, maybe they've got a vanity plate on, or maybe a couple of numbers scratched off or whatever, then I'm less comfortable with that being a primary offense. But I think, but overall, it's just, it's thorny to work that out in bill language, because you're just giving a lot of discretion to police. So those are my sort of all over the place thoughts. Great bill. I think I'm sensitive to the idea of making it a primary offense. I think that could be nice, because I really think these folks are bad actors. At the same time, I think we are going to be on stronger footing on the floor and also in the Senate if we do a secondary offense.
Madam
Patrick?
Chair, can you make a quick point?
Yeah, I was hoping you would.
The current law is primary offense. The
And-
amendment would make it a secondary offense.
And current law has with intent to avoid identification.
Correct.
So, Delegate Jacobs?
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. Patrick, hopefully you can answer me this question fairly easily, but you know, several years ago, well, there's been a historic tag for years, and several years ago, we actually beefed it up to say you couldn't use it for employment purposes. It was added to the non-permitted use of that tag, but there's a lot of abuse with the historic tags out there. Is that a primary or a secondary when they have the historic tag on their vehicle? Could you tell me that?
Well, it depends. I think they're all primary. There's very few secondary offenses in the code. Delegate Stewart is correct. We did change a few last term, but before that, there was only like 2 or 3.
But I mean, if and I'm going to use this specific, even though there's more issues in the bill, I mean, in the law, the one we last passed on historic tags, which says that you can't use that vehicle for employment purposes.
Oh, right.
So,
yes.
and I mean, it's very specific as to the use of that tag, and it gets abused all the time. So my question is that a primary if you're using it for employment? Say you're violating what it says because you're actually going back and forth to work, and is that primary or secondary?
I believe that's primary.
Okay, thank you.
This has been a great discussion. I don't think we're ready to vote on this yet, but I appreciate everybody's conversation. And we'll keep working on this. Any other thoughts on this? Okay, thank you, everyone. Really appreciate the conversation as usual. Okay, moving on to 689. This is also something we are not ready to vote on, but just wanted to start the discussion of it. Patrick, do you want to let folks know where we are?
Well, this is the bill that's changing the tax credit program for electric vehicles to a rebate point of purchase program. Basically the same number, same parameters, same defined terms. And the 2 big things is it changes it to the rebate program. We know that. And then we have in the bill some income levels, which is also a first. So that, you know, if you make over a certain amount, you wouldn't qualify for the program. And just to be honest, that's where we're having a little bit of a hang up as to how that would work.
Delegate Morgan.
I'll jump in just for fun.
Just for fun.
I have a real hard time with this. And we've been talking, and Doug and Stuart talked earlier about the Transportation Trust Fund, and Doug Guyton talked about how we should increase fees. And we saw that there was another $250 million write down today. And, you know, as much as a lot of people are looking to this, we're talking about, you know, how many times are we putting square pegs in round holes? I mean, we have electric chargers, we're trying to get more electric vehicles, etc. We're trying to encourage all this to happen, and there's just no money. So I don't know how you get there when you try to. I mean, the manufacturers are cutting back on electrical vehicle production. The dealers have a glut on the parking lot of them, and now we're trying to find new ways to encourage you to buy something that doesn't seem that the public really wants right now, or it's had its initial phase. The early adopters are in, and now you're sort of stuck on hold.
Okay, I'll jump in. So we're not, with respect to the first point, this money is already committed. So, right, Patrick?
Yes.
Okay, so we're not taking money away from things that we're trying to raise money for. And then for the second one, I think you are right that the early adopters have already committed, and now we're trying to encourage other people, and that is the point of the incentive. So we are trying to meet our greenhouse gas reduction goals by encouraging people to buy EVs. And right now, it's actually very difficult for people to access this. So we're trying to make it easier by having it be a point of sale rebate. Yes, Delegate Morgan.
That part I get, but then you're trying to prescribe, I think Patrick said, to income levels. So I go in and say I make $52,000 a year as a delegate, which is the salary we all get. That's my job. Okay. Then what do you have to bring your 1040 in and do your tax returns every year in order to get there and show the dealer here's how much I make?
That is a great question, and that is exactly what we're grappling with right now, is how does that work? At the federal level, there's a federal rebate, and the IRS runs both the rebate and obviously your tax returns. So it's a lot easier, where in Maryland, the rebate would be run by MVA and tax returns run by the comptroller. So we are trying to puzzle this out right now. So you hit the nail on the head. Any other questions, comments, thoughts? Patrick, anything you wanted to add on that one?
No, I think it's a simpler bill than it looks.
There's no such thing as a simple bill. That is my mantra. There is no such thing.
You know, that port bill was pretty easy.
All right, fair. So maybe there's one. Okay, moving on. HB 1001, which I also think is just for discussion. I think we're still hammering up some final language, so we won't be voting on this tonight. Is that correct, Patrick?
I believe you're right.
Okay. Would you please talk us through where we are right now?
Okay, yeah. Well, this bill, it puts privacy measures on automated enforcement programs. Simple as that. And you know what the exact privacy measures will end up looking like, we'll find out soon enough. But right now, they're required to remove from records and destroy recorded images or data that do not constitute evidence of a violation, or constitute evidence of violation once all the adjudication has been exhausted. And then has standards for it allows disaggregation of the data for analysis purposes. And then it's got procedures for handling of the data and the images, and for the software, standards for the software. Now, the one thing This applies to all of our current programs for automated enforcement, except for the bus lane program, which had its own language in it. I think we're going to do an amendment to add the bus lanes in here. What it is it's the section setting out the standards and then just cross-referencing, applying them in all of the automated enforcement programs. So we'll just add that for bus lanes. We'll add language in the general area saying this applies to any future automated enforcement programs. And then we have to get the final language working with the chiefs of police on language for what we can use the information for and when you must destroy it. And then I'm not sure about the auditing piece. Madam Chair, maybe you have a better handle on the auditing piece.
Well, that's something that you and I need to talk about as to whether we need it, because I think you just mentioned that we have it in there already. But that was something that was recommended, sorry, I just dropped something. Recommended to me by a privacy advocacy organization that we wanted to make sure that agencies could use the data to audit their system and make sure it was working correctly. So we just need to make sure that that is covered. We don't want to prohibit them from making sure that their system is working correctly.
Fair enough.
So any questions on that one? Yes, Delegate Healy.
Yeah, I want to be clear that I'm not being critical. I think it's a good idea and I think we should do it. But I do have a question about if my intuition about this is on point or not. I mean, look, I like to watch FBI shows and stuff like that on TV, and all of these things where they're looking for somebody, an escaped criminal or a terrorist or somebody, and they're always looking for, like, wherever there's cameras anywhere for anything, right? To see whether the person escaped and what road they went down and all of that stuff. And I wondered if there is a difference in kind, because these cameras are government operated and they're not private. I mean, if you have a camera in an ATM machine and somebody comes up behind somebody you get the image of somebody who's attacking somebody while they're getting money out of the ATM machine. That's all private stuff. That the cameras are not owned by the government. So that's my intuition about the difference here. Or maybe all that stuff on TV is just made up and it's not the way things really work. I don't know.
Well, one of my favorite shows is NCIS LA, and they surveil everybody and every camera everywhere. But to answer your question, that's actually one of the things that I am working through with the chiefs and sheriffs. I've got some language that would align it with what Montgomery County does, which is that they can get it. It's only to be used for the purpose for which it was obtained. These are not surveillance cameras. These are, speed cameras or red light cameras or bus cameras or whatever they are. Unless there is a warrant, court order or subpoena, and that's what Montgomery County requires. And then there's a sub paragraph that says, unless it's exigent circumstances, which you don't actually have to say because that's a standard exception to Fourth Amendment jurisprudence. But I put it in there just to make them comfortable.
So,
and we're having some conversations about that.
But if you destroy everything, then there's no opportunity to do that at all.
Well, so there's the second point is that, the only thing they'd be getting access to is the violation information.
Okay.
Right. Delegate Guyton and then Delegate Stewart.
Thank you. And I think I just heard you answer my question. I was looking everywhere to see if I could read the amendments, but I don't see any on an email. So these are just theoretical amendments at this point.
We're
Okay.
talking through them right
Send
now.
those to us hopefully before the next conversation so we can dig into them. Perfect.
Absolutely. Yep. Yes, Delegate Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just add, like, conceptually, I do like the idea of solving crimes with cameras. So I don't tend to watch NCIS. I tend to watch the true crime shows. And I will recommend one. There is a great one called See No Evil that's just all about cameras catching people. It's very good, Delegate Healy. You would like it. I think you can find it on your favorite streaming service. So I like the MoCo conceptual amendment of letting them do it with a warrant. I mean, I think just doing it willy-nilly does give me pause, because as much as I like catching bad guys, you know, civil liberties are also important. So I like the idea of making law enforcement have to go to court for it, but I also do not want necessarily to take this tool completely out of the toolbox for law enforcement to go after the bad guys using speed cameras. And I can confirm on true crime, so not NCIS, not scripted, that they have solved many crimes with public red light cameras. Like, not necessarily like watching someone commit a murder on the red light camera. That would be kind of hard because you'd be doing it in the middle of the highway. But confirming that someone, for example, went to the murder scene or to like the body dump site and back using some of the red light cameras. So whether that's you find that cool or creepy, maybe an indication of how much you like this bill. But that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Delegate Stewart. Any further discussion on this bill? Great, thank you all. Appreciate that. Moving on to our last 3 bills of the day. We have let's talk about HB 356 and HB 761 somewhat together. If you recall, Delegate Moon brought forth the challenge of the school bus speed cameras and the 4+ lane violation. So Patrick, will you walk us through HB 356, please?
Well, I think you pretty much just did it. Requires the law enforcement agency to mail a warning instead of a citation for a first offense. This is school bus cameras, as the chair said. If the violation occurred on a 4-lane road, 2 in each direction, and by the nature of the violation, there can't be a divider. What do you call it? A median.
Median. By
the nature of the violation, and the motor vehicle is traveling in the opposite direction. This bill, it's drafted a little differently, but it's got all the same elements of a bill that passed the House last year. Oh, and it's also got the report in conjunction with Montgomery County on certain school bus stops, studying certain school bus stops, and putting together a plan for safety at the bus stops.
Thank you. Yes, I think last year it was 849 passed the House, 110 to 25, and didn't have a Senate cross file. This year it's Chair Smith. Delegate Guyton.
Thank you so much. I just wondered, this bill makes me a little bit uncomfortable, and I've already shared that with you, Madam Chair. But I do wonder if we went this direction, which I know we have in the past, and I probably voted for it based on what you just said, then could we also, on that initial citation that says you're getting a warning this time, could we make it very clear to people that they will not get another one? That if they do this again, they will be charged. And can we say that then law enforcement can't waive that? Because I do think this is a dangerous situation, and we can't always predict where the kids are going and where they're coming from. So I mean, I'm concerned about it for that reason.
The problem is that district court citations are uniform. To put something on that for just this violation, I think would be logistically pretty difficult to do.
So my question then is, how then can we get people to take this offense seriously, right? If they're like, oh, well, you just got a warning for that.
Well, next time they will get tagged. Sorry, Patrick, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think the sponsor thinks the real problem is that the people who are committing the violations don't know that it's a violation because they're so far away from the school bus. They're on the opposite side of the road, usually in the right lane. It is a violation.
Mhm. Did we
legally,
hear
but-
though that law enforcement already has the right to issue a warning?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
Well, these are school bus citations. I'm sure they can do a warning just like some red. I mean, I can look into it, but just like speed cameras can and the like.
So,
I
but
doubt they do.
without the bill, they could just give these particular people a warning if they chose to do so and thought it was in the best interest of the safety of the community.
Yeah, I can see it here. It's in the bill. I mean, the current law is in the bill. They may mail a warning notice in place of a citation. It's current law, yes.
But I believe they don't, is what the sponsor found.
I'd be surprised if they do a lot.
Yeah. Delegate Ziegler.
I haven't seen a warning that I can remember. Perhaps they make that clear anyway. I mean, I don't know what the piece of paper looks like, but I'm sure it does suggest to you that you're not getting another warning, or that, you know, I'm sure they're forceful in their language, or at least it would be worth looking that up.
Thank you. Delegate Stewart?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a tricky issue. I mean, I think I fall in the camp that I think a lot of these bus stops just are unsafe. And I think Delegate Moon was saying, we can make a decision about if we think they're safe or unsafe or whatever. And I know that in Comar, there's that provision that was cited at the bill hearing that says you have to drop off kids basically at their residence, like right next to it. You can't make them cross when you drop them off at home, and that home may be, a multifamily apartment building. But you can still drop them off on the right. They live on the right. And then there's like a McDonald's or whatever across the street. They could be crossing immediately after getting off the school bus and all hanging out at McDonald's after school. So that does happen. I mean, I think a lot. I think that's why it can still be unsafe to pass a school bus even several lanes away, and even in the opposite direction. That said, I think that this citation is just so counterintuitive to people that this would be something that they would be ticketed for, that even though I do think it's unsafe, and I don't have a ton of sympathy for the drivers, and I also think a lot of these bus stops are unsafe, and I really hope that Delegate Moon is successful in his attempts to try to reallocate some of this revenue to the bus stop so we can get medians up. Despite all of that, I think that a warning is appropriate, and that's why I've supported, similar bills in our local delegation, just because I think there is a big gap between the public's understanding of this and what the law is.
Thank you, Delegate Stewart. Any further discussion? Okay, are we ready to vote? Or do people need more time? Where are you?
I'm
Is there a
ready.
motion?
I'd love
Okay.
more time.
Which bill are we voting on?
Well, Delegate Guyton just asked for more time, so Delegate Guyton, you have a little bit more time. It may just be until Monday because crossover is running. But we will hold this till Monday. Okay, that was 356. The next one is HB 761, which is the companion one to this. Patrick, what is HB 761, please?
Okay, this is a Montgomery County bill. It requires fines collected by Montgomery County for school bus camera violations that are recorded on state highways to be remitted to the controller to go to SHA to be used to enhance pedestrian safety. And this is where the amendment comes in. Instead of, the bill says where violations occurred, and it's substituted with along state highways where students board or exit a school bus, and not including expressways, travel to or from a destination at which they board or exit a school bus. So it broadens the areas that can be looked at for safety, and MDOT seemed to be pretty happy with that amendment.
Yeah, so it's just reallocating the funds that come in to unsafe areas.
I think that's a great idea.
Delegate Stewart?
Yep,
Oops.
no brainer, local bill. I don't know if Delegate Healy was about to move it, but move the amendments.
Second.
Right, all of those in favor of the amendments? Excellent. The bill is amended.
Move the bill.
Actually, it came in amended, right? We didn't amend it.
No, we officially amend it.
Oh, we officially amend it?
It's a recommendation from the delegation. We'll turn it around, make a recommendation to the committee, who will make a recommendation to the floor, who will put it on.
Got it. Okay. Because I thought we amended it in delegation.
It's a suggestion.
Okay, thank you. So did we just vote on
No, we
the
just moved.
amendments?
We just moved and seconded the motion on the full
Okay.
bill.
On the, great, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, anyone opposed? Excellent. Thank you all. And last but not least on our agenda is HB 840, and I want to thank Delegate Guyton for working with the sponsor on this bill. Well, Patrick, will you walk us through the bill, please?
Well, the bill is introduced, took the motorhome and trailer dealers and their licensed salesmen, said they could participate in more than two annual vehicle shows. Delegate Guyton has worked out an amendment to say that they can work on 3 annual vehicle shows, which is one more than they can under current law, but not unlimited like the bill allowed. And apparently the sponsor worked with Delegate Guyton and they agree on this. She can speak for herself, though.
Thank you. Delegate Guyton, did you want to say anything on it? No?
That's accurate. We worked it out and the sponsor is fine with that as well. Thank you. Thank you
Great.
for listening to my concerns.
Thank you.
Move
Any
the
discussion?
Move the amendment.
Great, move the amendment. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion on the amendments? Seeing none, all in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. The amendments passed on the bill as amended.
Move the bill.
Second.
The motion and a second on the bill as amended. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the bill as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. HB 840 passes as amended. Thank you all. I know this it's a long day, but I truly, truly appreciate your work and all of your comments. I will both see you on the floor, and then we are back Monday at 7. And we will have another full agenda, but obviously we have to be done by 7:50. Beyond that, we will be voting a couple of times next week. So stay tuned.
And just so everyone knows, the bills we voted today in the full committee, they're not going to the floor till Tuesday.
Great. Wait. Okay.